Hi, my name is Maria Angelica Garcia, and for this semester's final project, I decided to design a standalone PV system for a Northern California homestead. So a little introduction into the project. My project was actually based on a real life scenario. My family has a property in Mad River, California, which is based right about on the border of Trinity County and Humboldt County in the West Pacific. The closest TMY station that I could get data from, however, was from Arcata, California, which is about 70-ish miles northwest. The homestead is a private homestead that is completely off-grid because it is completely undeveloped. It has no connection to power, no connection to internet, nothing like that. So it's completely undeveloped and needs an electricity source. It's a seasonal vacation property, so my family mainly uses it in the summertime. For the purpose of the project, I did it from May 15th to September 15th for the analysis. The needs are basically just a standalone PV system that can sustain the basic necessities on the homestead, so basic summer activities and things like that. Right there where the little sun is on the Google Earth image of the property is where the system is proposed to be because it's a nice open field. There's no shading and nothing like that, so it gets maximum sun coverage. Some more background. I included a picture of that open field to show how it gets a lot of sun. So some basic necessities of the homestead are a small refrigerator that runs pretty much 24/7, a kettle, a couple of LED light bulbs that are used for lighting, and an iPhone and iPad charger. Like I said, it's a completely undeveloped homestead and is only used in the summertime. So there's not a whole lot of needs in terms of electricity. We have like a lot of things like an alcohol stove and other items of the such to maintain life. So the electricity demand is pretty low. Like I said, there's no shading during the day, it's an open field, and the goal of the project is to design a standalone PV system that can operate fully off-grid with battery storage to sustain the basic operations of the seasonal homestead, as well as to minimize the cost to the consumer. Cost is a key factor in this project, however, because it's pretty small, it's not expected to be a very large system, so cost isn't absolute. So for load parameter details, I listed them out. I have the mini fridge, iPhone charger, iPad charger, kettle, and lights. The time frame for the mini fridge is pretty much constant, with the iPhone charger and iPad charger being from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m., the kettle being operated from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., and lights being operated from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. I went ahead and calculated the estimated load for each of those for 1 hour. And basically did that for every hour of the day from May 15th to September 15th. So the results from my load calculations, which all calculations are included in the appendix and shown in code snippets, but my results showed that the total load over the course of the year was about 387.7 kilowatt hours. As you can see from the graph, the majority of that is blocked out right in the middle of the summer. So yeah. So my initial system design, I knew I had a relatively low load and expected to need relatively low energy generation. So I looked up some modules and I decided to go with a 24-volt PV module by ProStar that has a system wattage of 260 watts. I assigned a module tilt of 30 degrees due southwest because I felt like that was the best positioning for the panel in that field. I also decided to include a 12-volt battery because I don't think that there's a lot of storage that needs to occur overnight to run just the mini fridge and basically some phone chargers. And it's about 200 amp hour lead acid battery and then a 1500 watt inverter. So results from my initial design, my panel was generating more than enough energy at about 485.47 kilowatt hours over the course of the year, compared to the load necessary being 387. So that was good, and you can see through the graphs that the load is pretty consistent every day, because sun is usually pretty consistent over the course of the year. So that was good. But then when I went and did a battery state of charge and availability analysis, I saw results that were less than ideal. My battery state of charge average was only about 69% and was relatively low over the course of each day and each hour. And the total load from the battery was also pretty unideal. The initial availability of the system was found to be only 32%. And again, all these calculations can be seen in the code snippets in the appendix. So my initial thoughts were that this wasn't probably not the best system, but I didn't want to change it dramatically because I wanted to keep cost in mind, and if I increased the size of the panel or the battery, it would increase cost. So I did some research and decided to remedy the design by including a maximum power point tracking MPPT charge controller, which basically tracks the ideal point on an IV curve, where current and voltage provide the maximum power of the system. And so I decided to include that because it would help decrease the voltage while increasing the current, and therefore optimize the power output. And when I did that and simulated it in my code, the addition of the charge controller increased the availability of the system to 94%, and the average BOC increased to 84.78%, and the lowest BOC was only about 6.23%. So my results became much more optimized, and I thought that this was a much better design because an MPPT charge controller is relatively inexpensive addition to the system. So speaking of expenses, I also calculated the initial system costs. I looked at the PV panel, which was assumed to be $1.5 per watt. The MPP charge controller was only about $72, battery was $317, and the inverter was about $218. References for these can be found in the references section. The initial cost for the PV system, like startup cost, was about $390. The initial operation and maintenance cost at about 5% or 0.5% fraction was $1.95. The net present value of O&M with a 3.5% growth and 3% interest rate was about $50.19, and the NPV of the entire system came out to $1,775.56, which for an entire PV system really isn't a whole lot and is very affordable, especially when you're using it to operate your entire homestead. So yeah. So annual costs came out to about $91.19 for the annual battery cost, which was assuming a 5-year replacement. The annual PV cost was about $22.4, and the annual O&M cost was about $2.88, with the total annual system cost being only about $116.46, which isn't bad. Especially considering you're not like hooked up to the grid, and that only comes out to about like $10, less than $10 a month, which is nice considering you don't have to worry about being connected to the grid or power outages, which are very, very common in that area due to a lot of fires that happen in California. So I felt like this was a good design and good value for the customer. So here you can see the appendix, which with all the code snippets for my technical approach. The code snippets were originally provided by the instructor, but I modified them as necessary to fit the needs of the scenario. I went through and highlighted and showed code calculations and everything in these code snippets. And then I included references. So thank you for listening to my final project, and I hope you enjoyed.